my mother, history resides in things. In many Native traditions, history resides in stories, and they actually travel more lightly and they wear better. But in most Western historians' minds, history travels in things. So in the basement, in the home where I grew up, we had 5 generations of things from both my father's lineage and my mother's lineage. So we had an incredible amount of stuff. And for my mother, to respect history means to respect the things, those physical objects that people have created and or that people have used. And some of those things are really quite extraordinary. So for example, my mother has the love seat where her grandparents courted, that they used to court on. And we have, my mother has a letter that was the last letter one of our ancestors wrote to his wife before he died in the Civil War. There's a photograph, a very early photograph taken of my great grandmother and the clock from her home. So there are all kinds of interesting things, but we also just had piles and piles of stuff. And for my mom, she doesn't want to give any of those things away, because to do that would be to dishonor that person and somehow forget about them, forget about their lineage and their memory. Oh, I want to share one other thing quickly too, is that passion for relationship with earth and gardening also led her to do things that were way ahead of her time. I remember when I was 6 or 7, she had a compost heap in the backyard, and I was totally fascinated that all of these vegetable scraps had turned into this beautiful dirt. So we had a compost heap long before it was fashionable, an organic garden, sort of by default, before anybody knew what an organic garden was. That was just the way she did things, because she had this respect for the earth.
She gave me Sebastian got a Harry Potter book, but I got a history book about knights. It was knights and castles in that era, but it was a pretty good book. It was a pretty good sized book. And I asked, why does he get a Harry Potter book and I get a castle book? And she said, knowledge is one of the greatest gifts that I could give you. And I think that's really true. And I'm grateful for that. When I was little, there's one when we were still in Colorado, when her and Grandpa both came out, and they brought these little planes. And I remember I was getting really mad that my plane wouldn't fly and Sebastian's plane would fly. And that mine wasn't going as high or as far. And she came over to me, she's like, hey, you gotta let it go and let it fly. And we spent 10, 15 minutes of her teaching me how to do it and just letting it go and just tossing it and letting it fly. And then it went straight into a chicken coop. Like right after we had done all of that work, we went right into a chicken coop. One that exemplifies really how caring she was I remember one of the times we visited her in Ohio, she got ice cream for us, but unfortunately we weren't allowed to eat ice cream, but she didn't know that. And she cared enough that she didn't just say, well, oh well, this is what we have. We went to the store and we got rice cream and strawberries. And then we had a little Sunday party in the little dining room with her, because she still wanted us to have that fun experience and to have that memory. And I still do. It was Napoleon ice cream, the rice cream. That stuff was good. And she went and got it and got strawberries, and we went and had our whole little ice cream party that we were planning on having.
My mother comes from a lineage of farmers and scholars. Not one or the other, but both. Her ancestors are both farmers and scholars. They came from Northern Europe to the rich fields of Ohio. They planted and farmed and became wealthy. And what did they do with their money? They sent their kids to college. I thought everybody grew up with grandparents who'd been to college, not just grandfathers, but also grandmothers. All of my extended family had gone to college because they valued scholarship. And that's very much a part of the world I grew up with. I say that my mother is the ultimate spelling queen and grammar cop. So I grew up with a great respected language, and that's in our family lineage. My grandfather, her father, was the financial editor of the Toledo Blade. My mother is a writer. My sister is a journalist. I'm a writer. So there's definitely a lineage of writers and people who respect language.
She really started my love for history because it was a rusty spoon that my brother found. And she was like, that's really cool. Like, that's really important. And I asked her why, because 4 or 5-year-old me, it's a rusty spoon. Like, that's not very important. We have regular spoons in the drawer. And she held it up and she said, this is the past. This could have been used to have meals eaten with old settlers, with people that lived here hundreds of years ago. That's really cool. This spoon could have been eaten by, and at the time I liked Paul Bunyan. So I was like, Paul Bunyan could have eaten with this spoon. Of course, he didn't, but it really started me on, well, what could this be, and when do I think it's from? Like, personally, I really love Roman, Greek, and Persian history, and also older, like, Revolutionary America time history. It's fascinating to me, and a lot of it stems from my grandma. And also, it really sparked a lot of my analytical side of, like, saying, okay, this relates to this, and connecting a lot of dots. Because, like, she could look at a building and say, okay, that was built in 1927 using this style of technique and these materials by this builder, has been standing for this long and remodeled this many times because there's that many studs in that wall. And then she'd open the door.